Welcome in Patriots Postgame Show. Thanks for waiting. Evan Lazar down doing the dirty work in the bowels of Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis, listening to the postgame interviews as the Patriots lose to the Indianapolis Colts 27-17. This was a 20-0 game. Patriots rallied to make it respectable, but really played like absolute trash. Pretty much all three phases of the game. You can throw the coaches under the bus too for 3/4 of this game. Some empty calories here in the fourth as they came back and, as we said, made it close. But Evan, let's start at the end here. As you said, you and I were just talking offline. This was as pissed off and sullen and sulky and moody as Bill Belichick has been in a long time with this game, and not taking anything positive out of it at all.
Yeah, we asked them some questions about trying to spin some positives, some moral victory, if you will, into this game. And I think we're at the point of the season now for Bill Belichick where we're in week 15 and the time for moral victories and the time for treating Mac with kid gloves, saying, oh, well, he played terribly for 3/4, but he brought them back. And that's a really good sign. That's a really good thing to look at moving forward as a foundational piece. Bill Belichick wasn't having any of it. I asked him about the run defense. First, I asked him what happened on the 67-yarder. Didn't want to talk about it. Then I asked him, well, how did you feel about how the run defense did against Jonathan Taylor outside the 67-yarder? Because they held Taylor in check for most of the game. He had 28 carries for 103 yards outside of the 167-yard touchdown. So he said that including the 225 yards rushing, which I thought the Patriots kind of game plan to concede a little bit on the ground here in this game. Bill wasn't having that either, right? No, the 225 yards rushing was too much also. So didn't play well, didn't coach well, didn't play a winnable game with the turnovers and the penalties and the blocked punt. This was a angry, pissed off, dejected Bill. And I think the one thing that you also have to look for to wrap up this point is the coach on the other side. Right. I think it's absolutely driving Bill nuts that he can't beat Frank Reich. And they beat him a few years ago when Reich had Andrew Luck in 2018 when he first got to Indianapolis. But to not be able to beat Frank Reich in the Super Bowl a bunch of years back, and then to get beat by the same scheme again here tonight where your defense really was overmatched for a lot of this game, I think that was another sticking point for Bill, that just from a coaching standpoint, from his standpoint, the X's and O's, the frustration coming out that Reich seems to have him figured out on the offensive side of the ball, even though the defense I thought played really well in this game for the most part.
Relatively, I think what killed them is just the way too many yards on first down. What made it easy for the Colts. I think that was a huge problem there. And again, you know where their strength is. The interior of that offensive line is what it is. I mean, and they're going to do that, and they're going to bully you. But you're right. At the end of the day, when you looked at the stats, minus, a couple gadget plays and the 67-yarder, they did an okay job on Taylor, well within reason to have won the game. Again, you eliminate that 67-yarder, and if they won it, you would have actually pointed to their ability to have kept, Taylor relatively in check. But it's just all of the other stuff was just so bad. And what I don't understand is just, we're talking defensively, what ended up happening with them being able to run, an X, Y, and Z. But from your perspective, offensively, did you like what the Patriots came out doing here? I was a little confused by it.
Yeah, I thought early in this game, some of the play calling was definitely a little bit peculiar, odd, whatever word you want to use to describe it. The toss play on third down and some of the other outside runs that they tried to run early on in this game were really head scratchers, because when you look at this Colts defense, you see a lot of speed. Right,
they're fast.
There it is, one of the most athletic players in the league at that position.
So why are you trying to beat them to the edge with Brandon Bolden? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things that on Tuesday when we talk to Josh McDaniels, hopefully we can get some insight. Hopefully we can get some answers as to why they did that and why they felt that was the best way. Because I really felt like coming into this game, the two advantages the Patriots had were to throw the football, which they ended up doing pretty effectively on the whole, outside of the two interceptions. When you look at, when you look at max production, especially when you look at like expected points added and stuff like that, to be almost a net positive in EPA despite throwing two picks tells you that on all the other plays you did
He
pretty
made
well.
some really good
Right.
throws.
Yeah, he
Yep.
made some throws down the field and was able to move the offense. But you talk about 1 for 4 in the red zone in this game. You talk about some of the situational play calling, and those are two things that in my mind, when you go to red zone and when you go to third and fourth down, those are when coaching truly comes out in game plan X's and O's, right? When you talk
Yeah.
about from a big picture standpoint, building an offense, developing Mac Jones, Josh McDaniel's done a great job in all of those fronts all year long, right? He's brought Mac along. He's gotten them into a good groove offensively from a structure standpoint. But when red zone, third and fourth down, that is when creativity, that's when, game plan wrinkles come into play. And I know he took a little bit of a shot at Bill Belichick in his post-game press conference, but Frank Reich calls the Nyheim Hines touchdown the Patriots special. That's what he called it in the post-game press conference. That's a little bit of a game plan wrinkle. Now, the Patriots had the one hand off to Jonnu Smith that gets called back by the holding penalty, but the lack of, I would say, creativity and usage of other people besides Hunter Henry in the red zone is really killing the Patriots. When they get down there inside the 5, they want to bully ball it. I know on third down, Mike Onwenu jumps off sides, and that false start penalty probably took away Ramondre Stevenson run up the gut. Right, that was probably when they brought the 6th offensive lineman. That's probably where they're going with it. But it's rudimentary down there. It really is, and I can't put a finger on why, and I'm also not going to sit here and say the reason why is because they don't trust Mac to put more on Mac's play, because we're not talking about Mac. We're talking about creative wrinkles to get the ball into the end zone from the high red zone. Once they get into the 10 to 5 yard line, I'm perfectly fine with them putting Onwenu on the field and bullying the ball into the end zone. That's what they should be doing. But when you look at the high red zone from the 10 to the 19, their struggles in that area of the field it's not just this game. This game was a microcosm of their struggles all year long, ranking 26th in the red zone offense this year, and it's only going to get worse after tonight. So you look at some of those things, and I think that's from a stylistic standpoint. I said 1 for 4. They were 2 for 4, but one of them was an interception, so you take points right off the board right there, right? So that gets you 0 in the red zone trip, and some of that's on Mac, right? He obviously throws the interception. It's not necessarily on McDaniels, but I would just like to see the red zone design basically right now, and I can't believe that teams are still getting beat by Hunter Henry down there, right? Because he's all they got.
I know.
He's the only consistent weapon they have in the red zone for Mac to go to right now.
Red zone, one thing, but let me ask you this: just this felt like this. I thought this was going to be a Mac throws at 30 plus times tonight by design, not because they were trailing and had to come up.
Right.
I just thought that that's what the Colts would give them, and that's what the Patriots would do. Also thinking that the Colts would expect the Patriots to try to establish a run, but the Pats were running out of strange formations. It felt like they were, with multiple receivers, they were running out of, multiple receiver sets instead of heavy packages. I would have thought it would have made more sense to either spread it out and go and loosen up the Colts a little bit, by letting Mac cook, so to speak. And we talk about it all the time. I thought that would be one option. I thought the other option would be do exactly what you did with the Bills and go heavy and throw in an extra tight end and just ram it down their throats for a little bit and see if you could soften them up some. They didn't do either of those things. And then obviously you run into that blocked punt, which again, we'll get into that in terms of why does that keep happening? It's the third of the season and no other team has more than one.
Yeah, we got to talk about that.
And that goes into a touchdown. We'll get into that in a minute. So you're instantly in a hole and you become one dimensional and everything gets a little bit more difficult. But I didn't understand what they were trying to accomplish offensively to start the game.
Yeah, the start of the game was ugly offensively from a lot of standpoints. I look at that fourth down play, for instance, at the Hunter Henry where they roll out the pocket. They've ran that same roll pick play a dozen times this year already in short yardage, third down, fourth down. Usually the sprint route that Hunter Henry ran is done by Jacoby Myers. So the one little wrinkle that they threw in there was that they had Hunter Henry run it this time instead of Jacoby. Yeah. But the Colts were all over it. They knew exactly what was coming on that fourth down. So building compliments off of that, doing something else different in that situation. And I have to go back and look at the tape of from what I remember looking at it initially, it looked to me like they could have ran the ball pretty easily in the inside the tackles, inside the guards there on that one particular fourth down. I think they had the B gap uncovered, in terms of a guy on the line of scrimmage taking away the gap. So they easily could have ran the football there. I felt like they cut off half the field. It's not there initially because the Colts are ready for the pick play, and that comes back to, is that that's the only play in their bag, right? That the only play in their bag on 4th and 1 is the rollout, because I've seen them run it. It's got to be 8 to 10 times this year already in short yardage going back to week 1. So the only play that they have in that bag and 4th and 1 is that rollout play. Like, there's nothing else that they can run there. That's frustrating as well. So you look at some of those things, and I definitely feel that it wasn't McDaniels' best game. But you can also go back through a lot of these plays and talk about player execution, certainly in certain situations as well. It's not McDaniels' fault that Mac Jones throws the ball to Darius Leonard, right?
Yeah.
In the red zone. That's not on the offensive coordinator.
No, and it looked like he got baited into that pick, Mac, there.
Yeah.
And
That happens.
And it happens,
Yeah.
and that's like rookie-ish stuff,
Right.
He got baited into that one and then just didn't see, didn't see it clearly on the second one there. So those are bad. I mean, he looked like a rookie, which he does at times.
It was a seesaw game from him, but I will say this, and they didn't pull it off, so you can't go full Brady mode, right? But Brady would have some of those games too. I mean, we obviously point to some of the Super Bowls, and in the Falcons Super Bowl being probably the biggest example of this. But you had a lot of games over the course of 20 years where you don't look very good for 2.5 quarters. You don't look good for 3 quarters, but the quarterback rises in the end. Right. And he goes out there and he makes a hell of a fourth quarter comeback and puts it together and puts them over the top. They weren't able to pull it off here today, but you have to give Mac some credit for what some of the plays that they made late in this game in the fourth quarter. He threw the ball exceptionally well. He did bring them almost all the way back, brought them into 20 to 17. They were in 3 points of bringing them all the way back, but they still, the start was the start. And I think when you look at what Bill Belichick said after the game and what Matthew Slater said after the game and a lot of other people that were up at the podium was they're not going to win very many football games starting like that, right? And when you have 8 penalties and you have 2 turnovers and you have a block punt go for a touchdown and you have all these things in the beginning part of the game and you get yourself into a 20-0 hole on the road, you are going to lose 99% of those games. So at the end of the day, there are some moral victories. There are some silver linings to this game. And I'm sure when we watch back the tape from Mac Jones's perspective in particular, he made some really good throws in this game, especially against some of their zone looks, moving the zone coverage, coming back to the backside, doing some things with Hunter Henry that I thought was really, really productive. Kendrick Bourne got involved. Jacoby Myers didn't have the best game, but he made some catches there on 3rd down.
I mean, one of Mac's best throw possibly was that Jacoby drop there.
Yeah.
In the
fade,
first half. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, he did. So he did. It's a seesaw, right? I mean, it's a rookie seesaw. He made some really, really good plays. He also made some really, really bad ones, and those are the ebbs and flows that you're going to have with the rookie quarterback.
Right. Here's the thing. It's a matter of perspective. Now you're in it. You'd won 7 games in a row and you started to get this sense of, oh my goodness, 1 seed by Super Bowl. Like, wow. And so the expectation level changes. If you look at it through a different lens in terms of Mac Jones, you've had a couple of wins recently. And again, this is going to put the sunny, kind of a sunnier look on Mac's performance, but you've had wins recently where Mac looked like he'd either regressed or was a bit of a non-factor. And you wonder what happens when they get down. Can he make throws? This is something you needed to see if you're the Patriots and a Patriots fan, that, yeah, he can make throws when he has to. And if you put the game in his hands, he's going to make some good decisions. He made a lot of good decisions in the second half, or, as they were trying to move. And you will lump in part of the third quarter there right before they scored their first touchdown there in the fourth. When they gave him the ball and they said, go, he made a ton of throws. So again, people have been begging to see that. At least you got to see a glimpse of it. What this does, though, is it screws you up in the AFC playoff picture. You really had to be perfect, because I don't see necessarily the Chiefs losing the rest of the way out. So that 1 seed is going to be really tough now. Now you got Buffalo next week, and you really have to get that,
Yeah,
get the W. Yeah.
the good news is that regardless of what happened this week, and I say this with a smile on my face because I think a lot of the Bills fans that I follow on Twitter tonight were taking some victory laps on the expense of the Patriots when it was 20-0. But regardless of the outcome of tonight's game, next week is a hat and t-shirt game for the Patriots if they win. They win the AFC East next week against Buffalo with a victory at Gillette Stadium, point blank, regardless of what happened tonight. So that there's still a lot of positives to go from moving forward. But I thought Matthew Slater said it best. If they play like they did tonight, they are not going to win very many football games here down the stretch. And it's going to be a quick end to the season if they continue to compound mistakes after mistakes after mistakes. It is not just the turnovers. It's not just the block punt. It's also the procedural stuff, right? That getting in their own way with some of the penalties. Like
The delay of game getting to the line
Yeah.
with 13 seconds left with Mac, the Onwenu penalty there going from 3rd and 1 to 3rd and 6 there, when all of those things are terrible. Terrible. You can't have them.
The Onwenu one was a real backbreaker for sure, and they almost had. Look, I think you could have technically. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. But you could have made the argument that 4th and 7, maybe you do go for it there instead of kicking the field goal. But that's a far way out for one play in that condensed area. And your red zone offense has stunk all year, so you're going to trust it there to get 7 yards. So
I agree, Evan, but I always think when you're in a position where you're going to go where you think going for it on 4th down is a likelihood, you have to play the first 3 downs as if you're playing 4 downs.
And that 3rd and 2 play with Onwenu is going right up the gut with Ramondre Stevenson.
Yes.
And they just didn't get the playoff.
And they didn't get to do it. And that's the killer there, right? Because then you're going to do it again. So you're right. It puts you in a tough position there. 3rd and 7. But even at 3rd and 7, you have to think, I need 2 I got to get home in 2 plays, not just 1, because you don't want to put yourself in a 4th and 7 situation. I think that field goal was bad. This is another 4th down that you can question with Belichick in terms of timid. I didn't think there was enough opportunities to get the ball back there. So that was a winner go home situation. Whereas the Colts go 3 for 3 on 4th down. I know this weekend was a big,
they went 3 for 3 with 3 4th down sneaks, though, to be fair, right? They were did. 4th and 1.
No, one of them was on their side of the field.
That's how they set those things up, though, if you're Indianapolis. And I actually thought the last sneak, they close. Almost had it. Yeah, they almost had really that. Close. I said to, that those plays often come down to when they decide to blow it dead, right? If they blow it dead initially and they roll his forward progress down, they probably had them, but the second wave often is the one that gets it over the line to gain. So that was tough. But I don't think I didn't really have much of a problem with the lack of aggressiveness. What I keep on coming back to for me is what are things that went wrong tonight that I can sit here and say are reoccurring issues for this team, right? I don't think penalties is a big reoccurring issue for them. They're playing a crew tonight, and it didn't sound like Bill Belichick was too pleased with Carl Cheffers for a number of reasons, but Cheffers and his crew throw more flags than any other crew in the entire National Football League. They are a flag-happy crew, and we saw that right from the early jump when they were calling those ineligible downfield plays, right? The RPO concept for the Colts gets called back, and then the screen gets called back from the Patriots for ineligible downfield. So these refs and this crew, they interject themselves into these games. And I think Bill Belichick was not too pleased with some of the calls that were being made, not necessarily saying that it was all, they were against the Patriots, so to speak, but the ticky-tackness of the calls that did go against the pass. For one, I know the holding on Jacoby Myers on the Jonnu Smith play that I think he maybe scored or got tackled at the half-yard line or something like that, and they call it back. The whole Patriots sideline
he might have hit the pylon on that one.
Yeah, the whole Patriots sideline was up in arms that they made that call, right? I mean, it's really it wasn't really even a huge factor in the play based off of where Jacoby Myers was in the field of play. So that one was a big backbreaker. But what I come back to from a big picture standpoint of what are some of the things, some of their compounding issues, what are some of their Achilles heels right now? I would say the first one is red zone offense, which I talked about during the bye week. I wrote about during the bye week, and it reared its ugly head again here today, going 2 for 4. The other one that I would say is they are the only team in the NFL, as we keep on saying, and we need to talk about this, that has 3 punt blocks this year. No one else has more than 1. And so when you look at some of the things that are continued to be issues for them, getting punts blocked is an issue that has continued to happen over and over and over and over again. And if you look back at this game, it's what 13 to 10 or 17-13 Patriots even late in this game if there's no blocked punt. And obviously things don't go exactly the same and the sequence changes, and I get all that, but the Patriots were not shy. Matthew Slater and Bill Belichick, they threw Jelani Tavai right under the bus, right? They didn't say that it was not a schematic rush. It wasn't anything.
Went right by him.
Run right by him. And Bill Belichick said it was Slater was a little bit nicer landing the plane. He said it was a technique issue and not a scheme issue. Belichick just said we flat out missed the block, right? So one guy is now in Tavai is now responsible for 2 out of the 3 block punts. And I hate to rag on one player like that, but I think it's clearly time to pull Jelani Tavai off of the punt block unit and put somebody else there. I mean, Michael Onwenu is not even playing, right, in terms of other than 6 offensive line. Maybe they should be putting him next to Joe Cardona to protect Jake Bailey, because this is becoming a major issue, and the game completely flipped, obviously, when they blocked that punt. So it just was a huge problem.
Yeah. So other than that, again, there's not a lot else you can really point to in terms of like the recurring types of issues. Again,
red zone, punt blocks.
The run defense, is the numbers are going to look bad. I agree with you. It wasn't as bad as it looked, but again, just giving up big chunks on first down there. And they did get, when they faced good interior offensive lines, I do think that that's where they're losing those battles up front against those types of teams.
First half, they got pushed off the ball.
And they got pushed off the ball big time.
In the first half. It ended up evening out as the game went on, but first half, certainly they were getting blown off the ball. And the one thing I will say, though, that I think is maybe Bill Belichick has this ability because of who he is and his resume more than any other coach in the National Football League, is that they never panic. Right. Whenever, they're getting gash on the run, they're getting moved off the ball, all game long. And they never went away from the game plan, which, to be honest with you, the game plan was more designed to stop Carson Wentz than it was to stop Jonathan Taylor at times. They're playing a lot of big nickel. They're playing a lot of too high. They were doing things that you look at and see teams do to stop the pass. And I think a lot of the too high stuff was the RPO based. For whatever reason, I've asked a couple of coaches, high school coaches, Twitter guys that tweet a lot, Coach Fast, things like that, but why the Patriots would play so much cover 2 against RPO. Nobody can tell me. Nobody can give me an answer as to what they think, but they clearly think that that's a coverage that they can play well out of against those types of RPO style concepts. So that was what the game plan was. The game plan was to hold Carson Wentz to 57 yards passing or whatever, and ended up being, and give up a little bit on the run and let that go a little bit. But obviously when you give up a 67-yard touchdown, that's when the plan goes, into the trash can, right? If you didn't do that, then you have a much better defensive performance and something to take away a little bit better. But I truly feel like they felt, getting questions now, well, why did they not load up to stop Jonathan Taylor? Well, I think that they felt like they were better equipped to stop Jonathan Taylor out of their nickel packages than they were to stop the pass out of base defense. And I think they really felt like if they put base defense out there, that Carson Wentz was going to throw all over their linebackers, right? And really have his way through the air. And you can keep teams, and we talk about this all the time with the analytics and stuff like that, but I think this is one area where I have seen Bill Belichick buy a little bit into what some of the analytics are telling you. And that is that the Colts ran for 225 yards, but at the end of the day, they only scored 20 points on offense, right? You can give up a look at that game against Tennessee where they gave up 270 yards on the ground and the Titans still only scored 13 points. So you can give up some yards on the ground, you hold them down in the red zone, you hold them out of the end zone from all those explosive runs, and you could really shut them down that way for the most part. But then you give up the 67-yarder, and it looked like on that play, Devin McCourty and Dante Hightower collided, trying to catch Jonathan Taylor on the cutback. And McCourty said after the game when we were speaking to him at the podium that that was what they call their 4-minute defense, right? When you're losing within 4 minutes to go of the final whistle, it's everybody down, right? It's everybody down, selling out to stop the run. And if he makes one guy miss,
then that's what happens.
He's off to the house, because at that point in that field position, the defense really needs to force a punt, right? Whether you give up a touchdown or you force a punt, you got to take some chances. You got to take some gambles to try to shoot some gaps and get some negative plays and get the offense off the field. So that's what happens there. And he goes to the house, and that's kind of the Boomer busted those types of plays. On the drive before that, they made some plays behind the line of scrimmage, and they got the Colts offense to punt. So it either works or it doesn't, right? There's really no middle ground with them when you sell out like that. And unfortunately, they obviously didn't make the play there. But I thought the strategy from a game plan perspective actually almost worked for the Patriots to not overreact to Taylor and not put all their big bodies out there.
Yeah, and again, if you kind of said it there, if you're looking for another silver lining, like to play this badly and to be in the game, like I can't imagine Patriots are shaking in their boots if they face the Colts somewhere down the line again.
But I can tell you that Bill Belichick hates Frank Reich. I can tell you that. I think that guy drives them absolutely nuts. That he just, for whatever reason, especially early, because the Super Bowl against the Eagles, and not to continue to rehash that terrible memory for all of our lovely viewers right now, but that game went a very similar way. If you remember, first half, the Eagles came out like gangbusters, blew the Patriots out in the first half, and then the Patriots slowly climbed back into the game, right? So, I don't know. It feels like to me that Belichick is pretty pissed off that Frank Reich still has his number. That's for sure.
Yeah. Other drips and drabs here from the game, Evan, that you want to hit on before we wrap?
Yeah. So a couple of other things. First and foremost, I've been one of the biggest defenders of Isaiah Wynn probably on the entire beat.
Wynn's a big one in the chat right now.
Very, very, very patient with Isaiah Wynn. I've given him a very long leash. I will say that the outside of him getting called for penalties all year long, penalties have been a big issue for Isaiah Wynn, both pre-snap penalties, false starts, things like that, but also post-snap holding. He's gotten called for more penalties than pretty much any starting tackle in the NFL. PFF tracks it, and he's right up there near the top of the list. So the penalties have been a problem for him all year long. But on the whole, I do feel like his play has been better than what the narratives out there suggest. Tonight, I am getting to the point where I'm starting to let go of the rope a little bit with Isaiah Wynn. Not only because of the false start where he's out of his stance and nobody else is moving,
walking into Ramondre.
Right, he gets lost on that block and basically tackles Ramondre Stevenson for the Colts defense. The sack that he gave up to DeForest Buckner, he tries to jump set, and when you jump set, it's a hit or miss type of approach as an offensive lineman. You either get the guy square and you nail it, or you miss like he did. But when you look at the play again, Brandon Bolden's coming out of the backfield, and it looks like Brandon Bolden is looking to chip DeForest Buckner. So all Isaiah Wynn needs to do on that play is block inside out. Just don't give up the inside. Right? Because you have some help to the outside. Now, you're not doubling him. You're not sliding protection, but you do have a little bit of help from Bolden on the outside. And you have this defensive tackle that's playing out on the tackle, on the left tackle, because clearly the Colts identified Isaiah Wynn as a guy that they could beat in pass protection, right, and they put their best pass rusher over him. And you have a guy playing all the way out there. He's not going to beat you around the corner, right? I mean, he's a 6'6", 310-pound defensive tackle, 3 technique, right? And he's playing out on the 5 over the tackle. He's not going to beat you around the corner. So to set out as aggressively as he did, overset, and give up the one thing he couldn't do was give up the inside, and that's exactly what he did. So you look at some of to me, what are focus errors, right? You have Buckner out over the top of you and you give up the inside. You go for a walk and you get called for a false start before the snap, and everybody's looking around at you. You tackle your own guy. These are not because Isaiah Wynn's not physically able.
Those are frowned upon. Yeah.
Right. It's not because he's not physically able to play the position, right? These are focused mental type of slip-ups that he's having. And if he's not going to lock back in and really refocus his game, then they're not going to change anything drastically in week 15, week 16. I know everybody's calling for them to flip Trent Brown to the left side and play on Wynn at right tackle. We're way too far down the line for something like that. But looking at it from a big picture, long-term type of standpoint, you have a quarterback in Mac Jones, a righty quarterback that likes to stay in the pocket, that isn't going to move around a whole lot. You're going to have to protect him for the next decade, right, is what you hope. And if you're going to do that, you're going to have a real stud at left tackle. And if the Patriots had a player there that they felt good about to pair with Mac Jones at that spot, I think that they would feel a lot better about their offense moving forward. So in terms of the short term, Isaiah Wynn's your left tackle. You're going to have to live with that for this season. The long-term outlook of Isaiah Wynn as the Patriots starting left tackle, I think, is certainly on the table as something that the Patriots would like to upgrade on moving forward, because it's not good enough right now.
They have to. If it's not, we've talked about this before, but if that draft isn't tackle or in that first round, it's something that they have to address. And you also have Trent Brown in a contract year as well, so that could be completely up in the air for next year. Yeah, I don't know. This is where we're at. It's weird to watch a Bill Belichick. It's weird to watch a Patriots team look this sloppy and unprepared coming off a bye week. And you, as you said, we've seen Bill do this before. I do think when there's a coach on the opposing sideline, he gets in his own head sometimes. It's almost kind of like, I know they're not going to be expecting me to do this thing, so I can't not do that thing, and I'm going to do the other thing, and he kind of
twists himself,
makes it, and he beats himself sometimes. He makes it tougher than he needs to, and I feel like this is kind of maybe what happened, which is why he's so salty in the press conference.
I do want to say, though, so that everybody doesn't go off and jump off the Tobin tonight after watching this game. The Patriots won 7 straight games, right, and they were due for a clunker. They were due to have a game where absolutely everything went wrong. And the one thing that you have to give them credit for, and I know Belichick wouldn't do it, and he wouldn't take the cheese when we tried to give him an opportunity to credit the team's effort at the end of the game, they didn't let go of the rope. Right, they could have wallowed in their sorrows. They could have let it sink them. They could have lost this game. A lot of other teams, like look at the Cleveland Browns when they came to Foxborough a month ago. They have a few things go wrong and they lose the game 45-7. Right, the Patriots didn't lose the game 45-7. They battled, they hung in there, and it just wasn't their night. Now, that I think that you're due for a game like that every 2 months. Right, you win 7 straight where pretty much everything goes right for you. And then you eventually are going to have a game like this, and at least it happened now, and maybe hopefully you can get some of these things fixed and corrected, and hopefully it doesn't happen quite this way in the playoffs. But if they come out this flat again, then they're going to be in trouble. And I also think it's a little bit of a wake-up call, honestly. I think, Matthew Slater didn't say that he didn't feel like the Patriots had necessarily done this, but I think it is human nature to start reading some of your press clippings, to start getting into yourself a little bit too much, a little bit too cocky, a little bit too, well, this is easy. Like we were just winning everything we do, right? We just roll it out there and we're going to win the game. So this hopefully will serve as a launching point, a wake-up call for the team and move forward. But we'll see next week against Buffalo, right? If they come out against Buffalo and they're flat again and they look like the team that started the season 2-4 like they did tonight, then we know that this is maybe more of something that is just indicative of who they are right now and not necessarily just a speed bump.
The reality is they're far from perfect. So are most AFC teams right now. So it's pretty wide open. I think it's going to come down to who plays cleaner football a lot of the times. So they're not good enough to get away with this many mistakes.
Right.
They just have to clean it up. You take whatever positives you can out of here, including I'll even throw N'Keal Harry in the mix after he got.
I did want to talk about
before he got knocked out of the game.
Not to take any victory laps or anything, but I've given N'Keal, same as Isaiah Wynn, it burned me giving him the long leash. I've given N'Keal the long leash, and he finally had his Randy Moss moment, right? And I thought what was great about it, in particular, from not to like credit Mac for N'Keal Harry going up and making
that's everything you've ever wanted N'Keal to be. Use that big body.
He was one-on-one down the field. There was really nothing else there. right? There was no other option
Just
on the
win the
play.
one-on-one battle.
Let him go up and get it, and they
By
finally
being
let
the
him do it.
big
Yeah,
physical guy that we all know you are. Right.
yeah,
Play
yeah.
big for once. And he did. Went up,
I will say,
shielded.
I
Yeah.
absolutely hate the goal line fade. I hate it.
Hate it.
I think it's a low
Worst play in
percentage throw,
football. Yeah.
worst play in football type of. I completely agree, but he is 6'3", right? And I'm not saying you have to throw him the goal line fade, but
But
as a compliment to Hunter Henry, maybe N'Keal Harry is the guy because it's clear they thought it would be Jonnu, right? Jonnu was the big
yes.
red zone weapon in Tennessee last year. 9 red zone touchdowns for the Titans. It didn't work out. It hasn't worked out. But maybe N'Keal Harry can be the complement. Maybe he
Try
can be
it.
a secondary receiver that they can go to in that area.
Try it, though. I feel like he would just, even if he did get it, he'd just box it around.
Yeah.
I hate that play. I
Let
agree.
him box out. Let him sit
Yeah.
on the goal line like Hunter Henry did on his second touchdown. Let him, run a slant and try to use his body to guard the catch point. You don't have to throw him a goal line fake because I hate it just as much as the next guy, but
Yeah.
let him use his size down there. That's the one thing you can't. There's not a lot of room down there, so you can't create a ton of separation as it is. But the vertical separation that you can create, and then obviously like a basketball player like Henry did on his second TD, you sit down, you box a bunch of people out, you out muscle them for the football. That a lot of the time when you're throwing the ball down there, that's how you have to win in that area of the field, in that condensed area of the field. And the only other guy that they have outside of Henry, because Johnny's certainly not doing it. The only other guy they have on this roster right now that has that skill set, that has that body type, is N'Keal Harry.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I hate to see head injuries, but Nelson Aguilar got knocked out of the game with the concussion. So if he's not ready to go by next week for Buffalo, it could be a very big game for N'Keal Harry to maybe have some opportunities. So we'll see what he makes of it.
Yeah, a couple other little nuggets, a couple underrated throws. I really like. I thought that second touchdown to Henry was great by Mac, being able to move in the pocket, throw it kind of off balance, off one foot, and really just in right past a fingertip of a defender. And also that fourth down, was it the fourth down play where he just swung it out to Bolden?
No, it was third downs, all out blitz, and he
all out blitz.
knew exactly where to go with it.
Brilliant decision, knew where to go confidently, to throw a ball on 3rd and 10 that short of the sticks and know that it was the right play call.
Yeah.
And we talk about being able to deliver those short passes right where you need to, exactly in stride. A big moment there and a first down that they needed to get as they were driving, trying to get back in it. So it wasn't just the downfield stuff. He made a lot of other good throws, I thought, throughout the game.
Yeah, that's what I look. It's tough because when you hear the way that Bill Belichick spoke about it after the game, and Bill was just not having any semblance of positivity.
No, of course
right?
not, because he was so pissed off about how it started.
Any moral victories, he wasn't taking any of the silver linings. But when you really look at the way that Mac battled in this game, the throws that he was able to make on a good defense, and the way that he brought them back to in punching distance of this game, there's something to be said for that. And I know that he hasn't fully pulled off the comeback other than against Houston when he came back, but against New Orleans, against tonight against Indianapolis, against Dallas, the kid keeps punching, right? He keeps swinging. You can knock him down as many times as you want, and he keeps on coming back. And that process is eventually going to yield comebacks and yield bigger results for Mac down the line. Maybe this team this year in his rookie season, they're not quite ready to make that step forward just yet. But once they have everything around him and once they have it all figured out from that standpoint, if he continues to have that short memory and that mentality, then that's a building block for the Patriots. That's a foundational element of his game, I think. That part of it is a little bit like what you see a lot of the other great quarterbacks have. It doesn't always have to go 100% right for Mac Jones to continue to battle and to continue to make plays. I think a lot of guys are front runners. Mac Jones is not a front runner.
He's pretty tough. He couldn't wait to get back on the field. He couldn't wait to get the ball back. He's sitting there with his helmet on the sideline at all times, just waiting. Like, I want to get back out there and I want another shot. He's not a guy. He's not a guy who puts his tail between his legs after an interception. He's pissed, but he wants to get back out there and make up for it on the next time through. He's not affected by it either. It's not in his head. So that was one of the things people said on one of the knocks on Mac. He actually does have a tough time shaking off some stuff.
Sometimes, when he was younger, his coaches in high school talked
Yeah.
about I get very, very emotional. When he was a kid, he would cry,
Yeah.
and when he lost a game or threw an interception or what have you. And
we had the time earlier in the season where Bill's pulling him off the field with one arm, which is like, get yourself together, man. Let's friggin' go.
Right? A really great story from Nick Saban, actually, in that one of those CBS packages that Saban did about Belichick and Mac Jones. And he said that early on in Mac Jones's career, Nick Saban, sometimes at Alabama, he would watch practice from up above to watch the kind of the all 22 view, if you will, of practice. And he would watch up above, and he wouldn't be down there in the weeds with the players. And then he'd go and talk to them afterwards about what he saw from above. And he said that he didn't even need to look downfield to see if the pass was completed or not, because all he had to do was look at Mac Jones's body language, right? Because after every single incomplete pass, he's stomping his feet, or he's getting all mad or throwing a fit, and after every completion, he's the happiest guy in the world. So Nick Saban went down to him and he said, "Look, Mac Jones as a kid, before football really became a big part of his life, he was a big tennis player." So tennis players are like that, right? John McEnroe is obviously the poster child for it, but a lot of these tennis players, after every single point, something has to be emotional, right? You either have to be yelling that you did something good or yelling that you did something bad. And Nick Saban went down to him and said, "Look, if you're going to make it, you have all the talent in the world, you can do it, but you have your body language and the way that you carry yourself as a quarterback at that position is going to be really critical for your success moving forward." And Mac has done a lot to try to hone that in just a little bit and be less emotional on the field. And he brought him back. Look, I think there's a lot of critics out there that doubt that. Could Mac Jones put the team on his back down big in a road game 20-0? Could he bring them back? And he didn't bring them all the way back, but he came pretty darn close.
Emotional tennis players or anybody who plays for the Boston Celtics, they have a difficult time kind of getting past when things don't break their way. And Max turned it around in that regard, so we'll give him credit there, because he had his chin up the whole time tonight. And that was good. Again, looking at the big picture, I predicted Mac comeback win with the game on his shoulder. It didn't quite come to fruition.
You're close.
But I'm happy to see it. Like I said, we want to see him sling it a little bit, so I'm happy to see it. Some people still are down on Mac in the chat. I don't really get it. I am. It's not going to be perfect in year one. He
made some really rookie mistakes early on in this game.
But you want to see that I've always thought judging Mac is more about, are you seeing enough highs to be able to be high on him, versus did he make some mistakes or do some things that weren't great? Like, you expect that. He's in year one, but I want to see more high points. So tonight there was a ton of high point things that you saw, which is that's impressive to me. So I view it as a positive, even though he was shaky, but so was the whole team through the first couple of quarters. End of the day, Patriots lose one. They were bound to lose at some point or another.
Yeah. Look, they weren't going to run the table.
They weren't going to run the table.
No. This is not 2001. They weren't going to run the table. So,
and this felt like that was the one that was most likely of all of the ones remaining as well. So you don't want to see it go down next week in Buffalo as well. So they'll hopefully come back here. Before we wrap it up, any final thoughts, Evan?
No, I think that we as media, we as fans observing this team, I think it's important to keep some of the positives in perspective. That Bill Belichick might not get up there and say that anything went well, or they coach. He said they didn't coach well, they didn't play well, they didn't do anything well tonight. Was, I think, exactly what he said. And but let him worry about that, right? Let the Patriots and the team have that attitude. For us, I do think that you have to still look at the bigger picture of the fact that this team has really built something here, and just because they lost one game to a good Colts team on the road, then you don't have to completely wipe away the fact that they have competed very, very well for the last 2 months. So I still think this is a good team. I still think that they have a bright future ahead of them, and tonight just wasn't their night.
Multiple things. Good team. There's no team in the AFC that's going to run you off the field right now.
Yeah.
I think it's really a matter of who plays the better, cleaner game. But you know that they're in this thing, and most likely going to the playoffs and are going to be competitive, which is as much or more than you could have asked for at any point in time. So
yeah, I even thought winning the number one seed in the conference, I thought if they had done that would have been light years ahead of where anybody would have expected them to be.
Winning the division is light years ahead of where anybody expected this year.
Right. So the fact that they're still in position to win the division and win a home game, obviously, in the first week of the playoffs is something that we can't lose sight of, that just because we had a taste of the number one seed and just because we almost had, the Patriots almost had the bye and they almost had home field advantage and they were the number one seed for a couple weeks and that felt great. I don't lose sight of the fact that winning the AFC East and having a home playoff game in Mac Jones's first year with the Patriots as a rookie quarterback, that is a really, really good first season, regardless of what happens at that point.
Yep. So that's what we have. We got more Patriots coverage. You guys going to be doing your Pats beat on Monday?
Yes, Monday. Yes.
So look for more coverage tomorrow. Go to clnsmedia.com for Evan's write-up of the game tonight, and then he'll be looking at some film and posting a bunch of things both on clnsmedia.com and on our YouTube channel in the coming days. And then we'll have Patriots Beat live on Monday here on CLNS Media, where they will break it down even further. You got a couple trolls in the chat. Yeah, it's
Always.
all good. It's fine. If you hate the Patriots, what are you doing on this show? It's 1 a.m.
Go to sleep.
Go do something else. That's all right. We like it. We'll take everybody. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, and you'll be notified when we go live. Pat, we will have Patriots Beat will be live on Monday. We'll update you time. You can follow us on Patriots CLNS on Twitter for program notifications there as well. But until then, Evan is wrapping it up in Indy. Pats lose 27-17. They got blanked for 3 quarters. 20 zip ended up making a game of it. We'll take it. They are now the 3rd seed in the AFC, falling behind the Chiefs, who are 10-4, and the Titans 9-4, a game against Pittsburgh tomorrow. And they could be take that 2 seed spot away from the Pats. So it's a hat and t-shirt game next week against the Bills. We'll get you ready for that one. But until then, thanks for watching.